You're not supposed to see this, not in this age. A man naked and trembling is bent over as another slowly guides a greased wooden stake into his body, not to kill him quickly, but to keep him alive as long as possible. No screams, just silence, moans, the wet sound of wood against flesh. Around him, thousands more writhe in their final hours, impaled like grotesque scarecrows across miles of blood-soaked earth. This isn't some medieval painting or Hollywood fiction. This is documented history, witnessed, recorded, a message etched in flesh and written in agony. And the most terrifying part, it never truly went away. The stake evolved, adapted, found new forms and new masters. The method changed, the message remained the same. What you're about to discover will change how you see power, pain, and the thin line between civilization and savagery forever. When you hear impalement, your mind probably conjures images of Vlad the Impaler, or some distant medieval barbarism, a brutal relic of humanity's darker past, safely buried beneath centuries of progress. You picture ancient times, primitive people, methods too savage for our enlightened age. But here's what history doesn't tell you in textbooks. Impalement refused to die. From the Ottoman Empire's administrative chambers to colonial Suriname's sugar plantations, from Japanese POW camps to interrogation rooms that officially don't exist, the stake evolved. It learned. It adapted to serve the same eternal purpose, absolute power through calculated pain. The truth is, every empire discovered the same terrible secret. Fear isn't just an emotion, it's a language. And impalement was the most eloquent sentence ever written. Today we trace the chilling evolution of the stake, uncover the terrifying psychology behind it, and confront an uncomfortable question. If the method disappeared, did the message ever really go away? June 1462. The morning sun rises blood-red over Wallachia, as Sultan Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople, terror of Europe, marches with 80,000 men toward what should be an easy victory. The Ottoman war machine has crushed every resistance, toppled every defiance. Wallachia's prince, Vlad III, commands barely 15,000 soldiers. This should be over before it begins. But as the Sultan's army crests the final hill before Targovishte, something stops them dead. Not an army, not fortifications, something worse. Miles of stakes stretch before them like a forest of death. 20,000 bodies, maybe more, impaled and rotting in the summer heat. The stench hits them first, sweet decay mixed with dried blood and human waste. Then the sight, Ottoman prisoners, Wallachian criminals, suspected spies, even women and children, all mounted on sharpened poles that pierce their bodies from rectum to mouth. Some stakes emerge between shoulder blades, others split skulls. The positioning is precise, calculated, obscene. But here's what made Mehmed's seasoned warriors vomit. Many of the bodies are still moving. Vlad hadn't just killed his enemies, he had turned death into theater, agony into art. Each stake was carefully measured, blunt enough to avoid vital organs, greased with animal fat to ease insertion and prolong suffering. The angle of entry, the depth of penetration, the victim's positioning, everything designed to keep them conscious and screaming for days. Pain measured not in moments, but in heartbeats. Suffering stretched across time like a violin string about to snap. The Sultan finds his own captured soldiers among the forest. Men who had raided Wallachian villages just weeks before now stare down at him with eyes gone mad from pain and dehydration. Their lips mouth silent pleas. Some have been dying for 3 days. This wasn't random brutality. This was communication. Vlad understood something that would echo through history. Blood is ink, corpses are paper, and the right message written in flesh speaks louder than any army. As Mehmed's forces retreat, the mighty Ottoman war machine turned away by the sight of what one man could do to human bodies. Vlad's lesson burned itself into the collective memory of an empire. But empires, you see, are quick learners, and they never forget a lesson written in blood. 60 years after Vlad's forest of death, a French merchant named Jean-Baptiste Tavernier steps off a ship in Ottoman Cairo. He's traveled the world, seen executions from Paris to Persia, but what he witnesses in the dusty square outside the citadel will haunt his dreams until he dies. The victim, a young man accused of sedition, is already naked and positioned over the stake. But this isn't Vlad's crude medieval butchery. The Ottomans have refined the process. The stake is polished smooth, its tip rounded to avoid immediate organ damage. 2 executioners coat it with a mixture of flour and turpentine, not for mercy but to create friction that will keep the victim conscious longer. Tavernier watches in horror as they lower the man slowly, methodically. The crowd doesn't cheer or jeer. They watch in silence, understanding they're witnessing a lesson, not an execution. The victim's body accepts the invasion inch by careful inch, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, agony, and finally a hollow acceptance that this is how he will spend his final hours. What strikes Tavernier most isn't the brutality, it's the bureaucracy. Officials take notes, measurements are recorded, the timing is documented. Impalement has become procedure, not spectacle, administrative terror. The method spreads like disease through the empire's arteries. In Algiers, pirates impale captured European sailors to send messages to their home governments. In Damascus, tax collectors use the threat of the stake to squeeze tribute from reluctant merchants. The Ottoman bureaucracy has learned to weaponize agony. But across the Atlantic, in the humid hell of colonial Suriname, Dutch plantation owners are writing their own variations on Vlad's theme. Enslaved Africans who attempt escape don't face simple hanging. They face something the plantation records coldly describe as vertical suspension punishment. Hooks, heated red-hot in forge fires, are inserted through the spaces between ribs. The victim is then hung from these hooks, their own body weight slowly tearing them apart from the inside. It's impalement without the stake. The same message: resistance means agony beyond imagination, delivered through different anatomy. The overseers call it walking impalement because victims often survive for hours, stumbling around the plantation grounds as warnings to others. The horror evolves, adapts, finds new forms, but the intent never changes: to turn a human body into a living advertisement for absolute submission. The stake has become less about death and more about transforming flesh into language, a language every other slave, every other subject, every other potential rebel can read with perfect, terrifying clarity. And empires across the world are becoming fluent in this grammar of pain. To understand impalement's true horror, you must follow the stake's journey through the human body, not the sanitized version from history books, but the minute-by-minute reality of what it means to die this way. Close your eyes. Imagine it's you. The first sensation isn't pain, it's pressure. The blunted stake, slick with grease, meets the resistance of muscle and flesh. Your body instinctively fights the invasion, sphincters contracting, muscles clenching. But wood is patient, gravity is relentless. Inch by terrible inch, your own weight becomes your executioner. The stake slides deeper, guided by executioners who have perfected this art across dozens of bodies. They know exactly which angle avoids the major organs, which depth keeps you conscious longest. Your rectum tears, but that's expected. The real skill is in missing your liver, your kidneys, the arteries that would grant you the mercy of quick death. 20 minutes in, the pressure becomes burning. Your nervous system, overwhelmed, begins sending confused signals. Cold where there should be heat, numbness where there should be agony. Your legs go weak first, not from blood loss but from the stake pressing against nerve clusters in your lower spine. You feel yourself going limp, but the wood continues its methodical journey upward. An hour passes. The stake has traveled 18 inches into your body cavity. Your identity begins dissolving into pure sensation. Names, faces, memories, everything that made you you fades beneath the overwhelming reality of the foreign object reshaping your interior landscape. You try to scream, but the stake's pressure on your diaphragm reduces your voice to whispers. Hallucinations begin around hour 2. Your brain, desperate to escape this impossible reality, manufactures visions, dead relatives, childhood memories. Sometimes you believe you're somewhere else entirely, back home, safe in bed, and this is all a nightmare. But the wooden intruder inside you is patient, constant, undeniably real. Your bladder releases without your permission, then your bowels. The crowd, there's always a crowd, watches this final humiliation with mixed fascination and horror. This too is part of the message. We can reduce you to meat, to involuntary functions, to something less than human. By hour 3, if you're still conscious, the stake has likely reached your chest cavity. Each heartbeat sends vibrations through the wood. Each breath becomes a negotiation between your lungs and the foreign object claiming space inside your ribs. Your body's weight has driven the stake so deep that moving, even breathing, becomes an act of self-torture. Most victims die of shock or dehydration before the stake reaches vital organs. But some, the strong ones, the unlucky ones, hang on for days. They become living scarecrows, reminders of what resistance costs. Their eyes follow passers-by with an expression that transcends language, a perfect understanding of helplessness. This is what it means to make death into theater, to transform a human body into a monument to power. And the most horrifying part, some executioners could keep you alive for almost a week. World War II, Burma-Thailand Railway. Lieutenant Colonel Philip Tusi watches Japanese guards tie an Australian prisoner over a grove of young bamboo shoots. The man's crime, attempting to smuggle medicine to dying POWs. His punishment, something the guards call natural execution. Bamboo, you see, grows fast in tropical climates, an inch per day in optimal conditions. The prisoner is positioned carefully, so the growing shoots will pierce his body at multiple points, slowly, over days, as the plants reach toward sunlight through human flesh. Nature becomes executioner. The method appears almost organic, almost civilized, just a man, some plants and time, but Tusi recognizes what he's seeing. Vlad's stake, dressed in jungle camouflage. The same psychology, the same calculated prolonging of agony, the same transformation of a human body into a message for other prisoners. The Japanese haven't invented a new torture. They've simply found a way to make impalement look natural. The war ends, tribunals convene, evidence is buried, but the lessons learned in those bamboo groves don't disappear. They evolve, adapt, find new vocabulary. Modern intelligence agencies don't use stakes. They use enhanced interrogation techniques. They don't impale bodies. They impale minds with psychological deterrence methods. Prison systems don't mount people on stakes. They place them in shock incarceration programs designed to break will through calculated suffering. The words change. The underlying psychology remains identical. Power through pain, control through the threat of agony that transcends death. Consider Guantanamo's short shackling. Prisoners chained in positions that slowly destroy their bodies over hours or days. Not impalement, but the same principle, using time and gravity to transform the human form into an instrument of its own torture. Or extraordinary rendition, the bureaucratic term for disappearing people into black sites where their screams can't reach courtrooms or conscience. In immigration detention centers, family separation serves the same psychological function as Vlad's forest of stakes, demonstrating that resistance means watching your loved ones suffer consequences worse than your own death. The children crying in cages aren't casualties of policy, they're the message itself. Even our entertainment reflects this evolution. Films about serial killers who play games with their victims, video games where torture is gameplay mechanic, reality TV shows built around humiliation and psychological breakdown. We've democratized the stake, made spectatorship of suffering into mass entertainment. The technology has advanced beyond wooden stakes and bamboo shoots. Sensory deprivation, sleep disruption, pharmaceutical manipulation, psychological profiling used to craft personalized hells. But strip away the clinical language, the legal justifications, the technological sophistication, and you find the same core truth Vlad understood 6 centuries ago. The right kind of suffering, witnessed by the right audience, controls populations more effectively than armies. If impalement is just the method, then the message is still with us. It's just learned to dress better, speak softer, hide behind more sophisticated vocabulary. The stake has become invisible, but its purpose endures, to write fear into the future, to make resistance unthinkable by demonstrating consequences that transcend death itself. Vlad didn't invent impalement. Archaeological evidence suggests humans have been mounting each other on stakes for over 4,000 years. What Vlad perfected was the psychology, understanding that the real target wasn't the body writhing on the stake, but the minds of everyone forced to witness it. The method was never the point. The message was, and that message echoes through every era, reinventing itself in the vocabulary of each age. Medieval stakes become Ottoman bureaucracy. Ottoman bureaucracy becomes colonial punishment. Colonial punishment becomes wartime torture. Wartime torture becomes enhanced interrogation. Enhanced interrogation becomes administrative policy. The names change. The clinical distance increases, but the core transaction remains identical. We will do things to human bodies that exceed your capacity to imagine, and we will make sure you know we can do them to you too. Why does this matter now? Because forgetting is complicity. When we lose the thread connecting Vlad's stakes to modern suffering, we lose our ability to recognize impalement when it wears a suit and speaks in policy papers. We become the crowd in that Ottoman square, watching administrative terror unfold while telling ourselves this is different, this is justified, this is necessary. But the victims know better. The people in immigration detention, in black site interrogation rooms, in solitary confinement cells designed to slowly destroy sanity. They recognize the stakes' evolution. They feel the same calculated prolonging of suffering, the same transformation of their bodies into messages for others. Vlad's forest of death was never about those 20,000 corpses. It was about the 20 million people who heard the story and decided resistance wasn't worth the risk. And if we don't remember what that forest really represented, if we don't recognize its descendants when they appear in our headlines and our policies, we'll never know when we're standing in its shadow again. the stake is gone. The message lives on. And until we learn to read that message in all its forms, we remain complicit in every forest of death that follows. History doesn't repeat, but the psychology of power, that's eternal as gravity, patient as wood, and always looking for new flesh to write its lessons upon.